People don't get better, they just get smarter. When you get smarter, you don't stop pulling the wings off flies, you just think of better reasons for doing it. There was something in her, something that was pure horror. Everything you were supposed to watch out for. Heights, fire, shards of glass, snakes. Everything that his mum tried so hard to keep him safe from.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I will be reviewing two books and then I'll be doing a little chat about both of them together at the end. So I'll be reviewing Carrie by Stephen King himself, and then I'll be reviewing Let the Right One In by John Lindqvist. So these are two books of horror aspects but not completely horror, which I'll be really interested to talk about. And yeah, I opened with a quote from each book which kind of gives the tone of each. So yeah, let's get straight into it. At first I am going to talk about Carrie by Stephen King. So Carrie is Stephen King's debut novel, which is amazing that this is such an accomplished book when it was his first one, and it's launched one of the most successful author careers known to humanity ever. He's now still writing 40-something years later on and still getting #1s every year, which is pretty extraordinary and unheard of at this scale. Carrie is his first book, and there's an amazing story behind how he got to writing it. If you want to research that, it is totally worth it, but I won't bog down this review with all of that because it'd be very easy for me to go on many a tangent. But Carrie is the story of a girl raised by an ultra zealous mother, and she is also bullied by her peers at school. She feels like the odd one out, and this is about someone being pushed to breaking point in what is a cruel and unforgiving world, especially of those of teenagers. We have quite a few perspectives in this book. Carrie is the main one, but we've got 2 or 3 other main characters and then a smattering of other perspectives who we just get a few little pages from. And yep, Stephen King is the king of... See what I did there? Yes, he is the king of creating that living, breathing tone and atmosphere of a town or place, because he really infiltrates the minds of many a character, bringing their own idiosyncrasies to the forefront, their own motivations and their own distinct personalities, which all you just understand within a few pages. Stephen King has a masterful grip on creating characters, and Carrie really exemplifies that really great aspect of his writing once again. As well as quite a few perspectives, we also have a few timelines and some different formatting, as this is non-linear. We have Carrie, as we're being told her story as she's going through this year until building up to her prom. And that is told in the past, as we know that an event has happened which is big and bad and violent, it seems like, but we're not sure what has happened. That brings us into, there are some interviews and reports written about an event from characters who are very loosely linked to the story, that we know they have seen an event, they allude to what has happened, but we're not quite sure what has occurred. But it really helps build that sense of dread and tension right until the culmination of events, and it is absolutely brilliant how Stephen King builds that kind of dread and, as I said, tension into that point where he just unleashed it at the perfect moment. And to do that in quite a short book, which is Carrie, is pretty brilliant, and again shows what a great writer Stephen King is. And then we've also got someone writing a report on telekinesis and learning from Carrie, and whilst at times this really worked, this jumping from perspectives and the different timelines, sometimes they're a bit too close together, that it was a bit jarring at times, where I knew when I was with Carrie, because she's got some different formatting which is only seen with her, but whenever it's anyone else, one of the other perspectives or the telekinesis report or the interview, sometimes I thought that the story is a bit too broken up and it felt a bit juddery, a bit jarring. I don't know what I'm trying to do with the robot, but yeah, a bit juddery. And yeah, it really made me feel, it took me a bit out of the story, and that's why this isn't my favourite book by Stephen King. I think there is so much to dive into and talk about. It's really interesting, and there are absolutely exceptional moments in this book, but there are weaknesses, and this is one of them in my opinion, that it does take you out of the story a bit. It's a bit over stylized in my opinion, and I think it really shows that when he does a similar thing but in some of his other works that I've read, he really does it, I think, in a more efficient way, and it shows how he evolved as an author, in my opinion anyway, because I know for a lot of people Carrie is their favourite book by Stephen King, and it is a classic, and I do agree it should be a classic. It's a classic for a reason. Can I say classic again? It's a classic. when I was talking about the different perspectives, I kind of touched upon Stephen King's really brilliant nature with characters, but it just astounds me how he can create such authentic feeling, vivid characters with their own, as I said, idiosyncrasies and their own slightly different vernacular based on their upbringing and their background and their hobbies and everything that really brings them into the person they are. How he ties all of that together to invest us in characters in such a short space time. I mean, there are characters here that I felt absolute hatred for. There were some that I felt such empathy for, and I just really like Carrie. What a brilliant central character. We spend a lot of time with her, but then some of the others like Tommy and Sue, who are more minor characters, who still play a big role, but we don't have much time in their minds. He still does an absolutely incredible job of investing us in the characters almost right away, especially when he's taking some of the tropes of kind of high school tropes of like the popular kid who doesn't care about being popular, the one who's bullied, got all these different ones that could really feel tropey and are in quite a lot of films, but Stephen King makes them real and authentic and makes it feel not like a high school drama. It really feels real and it is gritty, which I'll get onto. This is a book about bullying and it does not shy away from the details. Carrie is deeply affected and we see the effects of this bullying on her and how it ultimately leads to a big event that happens at the end of this book, because it is a book about pushing someone to breaking point. How far can someone go? How much can someone take when not only is she struggling with bullying, but as I said, she's got this ultra zealous mother, and there's the aspect that she has telekinesis, and when you've got that and you've got something that no one else has, you're going to feel lonely, you're going to feel out of place. And also being raised in a household that is so religious is thinking of, why have I got this gift? And her mother is not quite sure whether she is telekinetic because of it's a gift from God or from Satan, the Lord of Light or Darkness. I think they put it in the blurb, which I thought was a nice line. And yeah, so it's really kind of that kind of identity crises as well, and I thought it was really brilliantly done. Carrie feels like a teenager, but she also has agency. As I've said before, it's hard in a coming of age story where to have a character who is a child, who should really be more of a spectator without much agency or power, to really influence the story while still feeling like a child. But Stephen King does so brilliantly here, and I think Carrie, whilst I've said has its faults in taking out the story sometimes, overall it's a brilliant book, and also one of those that really impacts you after you finish that final page. Anyway, it has with me, and I'll get on to talking a bit about comparison with Let the Right One In soon, but now let's get on to talking about Let the Right One In. Just the one last note on Carrie, I thought it was great and I'd highly recommend it to any Stephen King fans, and also if you're getting into Stephen King. Now on to Let the Right One In. Now this is a book that could just be labelled as a horror, but in my opinion that would be a gross injustice, because this is so much more. This is a horror with a philosophical edge, I guess I could put it. Now I'll just quickly read a paragraph from the blurb to kind of get the premise done in a way which it summarises it a lot better than I could. It is autumn 1981 when the inconceivable comes to Blackberg, a suburb in Sweden. The body of a teenage boy is found, emptied of blood, the murder rumoured to be part of a ritual killing. 12-year-old Oscar is personally hoping that revenge has come at long last. Revenge for the bullying he endures at school, day after day. But the murder is not the most important thing on his mind. A new girl has moved in next door. A girl who has never seen a Rubik's Cube before, but who can solve it at once. There is something wrong with her though. Something odd, and she only comes out at night. So yeah, that is the blurb, and a girl who only comes out at night, and there's been a body found drained of blood, and it's a horror. I wonder what that could be. But yeah, that is the blurb, and before I get further into this review, I'm just going to talk about, there are two adaptations that I know of. There's a Swedish adaptation which I've not watched, but I've heard really great things about, and then there is an American adaptation which is just simply called Let Me In, and this is directed by Matt Reeves, the director of The Batman. So yeah, this is really dark. He brings his own touch to it, which is great. I think I prefer the book a bit, just because in a book you get that extra depth of character. It's no fault of Matt Reeves. I thought he did a brilliant job with the film, and that end scene in particular he just brought to life fantastically in a way that I thought was even better than the book. But the book, there's more character depth, and actually it's a lot darker than the film as well. There's a few more arcs that are really engaging and horrifying, but not gratuitous, and I think that is one of the things about this book. that it is gritty, it is brutal, there are horror aspects, whilst we also have this boy being bullied, and yeah, it can be quite brutal in that way, but it is not gratuitous. It's not just blood and gore for action's sake, or just people being evil for no reason at all. They feel like real people, and you see that these bullies, that it's about power, about that you see an insight into their own life as well, and what is making them into bullies, not necessarily to make them sympathetic, but to add that extra layer of understanding. And that's where this book does bring a bit of a philosophical edge. It really examines the psyche of the human mind. What makes us human? What affects us? Are we really in charge of who we grow into? Are we in charge of how we grow into who we are? And yeah, that's really interesting. It doesn't give you an explicit answer to that, which I thought was really great. I love it when authors leave you as the reader to make up your own minds, your own conclusions about the story. And also there's a question of who are the real monsters, and I'll get to that when I compare Carrie and Let the Right One In a minute. Let the Right One In, as the blurb said, is set in Sweden, so we have a cold, bleak landscape, which really is pathetic fallacy. It reflects the mood, but this is also a book that the mood is reflected by the characters that we are prone to seeing. We have some who are nice people who have flaws, and we also have those who have serious flaws, self-centered, selfish. Really, it doesn't give a great lens on humanity. It's pretty cynical, and it shows kind of that kind of drive just to survive, self-preservation, get from day to day, and how people are kind of really just taken up with their own lives. And I thought that was a really interesting part to the story as well. It's not just a horror story, it is showing life, and it also is commenting on, is this really what is important? Should we not be living life in a better way with these as the focuses instead? But yes, this book does not shy away from the horrifying nature of humanity at times. We see people do terrible things, despicable deeds, as well as acts that are really kind and quite heroic as well. And I really like books that really show that full scope, where they still feel human. It's not doing it just to be dramatic or, as I said, gratuitous. Let the Right One In really just felt natural. And also another point is, I'm not sure if this is true, but I've heard of quite a few books that are brilliant that are adapted that were originally written in Swedish, like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which I need to read. I'm not sure if Swedish just translates quite nicely into English. I'm not quite sure if that is right, or if just Let the Right One In had brilliant prose, because this translation is absolutely fantastic. It's lyrical prose, it's not purple prose at all. You really feel like you are part of this story. At times it's very stripped back, so you feel like you're immersed in the action and what is unfolding, but there's a lyrical edge as well, which really engaged me in the story. And I thought John Lindqvist is an absolutely superb writer with a beautiful edge to his writing, which allows you to be carried by this story, but little inflections to the writing as well really make you think about that kind of more philosophical, psychological edge as well. This is exceptionally written with complex characters and brilliant prose, and also a book that I thought about long after I closed the final pages. That is something Carrie and Let the Right One In have in common. But yeah, that is my review for Let the Right One In. I'll now go to doing a little comparison about Carrie and Let the Right One In. So both of these books that I've talked about today, Carrie and Let the Right One In, centre on a child or teenager who's being bullied at school quite severely, and through this we see the worst that humanity has to offer and the effects on a child of bullying that will take them further into their life, and also that idea of how far can someone be pushed. But as well, as I said, showing the worst humanity has to offer, there's also heart in these stories and hope despite the bleak landscapes and the terrible people we are shown the minds of. And yeah, I thought it was really interesting, that contrast of character, which, as I've said in this review already, really just shows the full scope of humanity and life as we see it and live it. And whilst this heart and hope is present, we also have this rising sense of tension and dread throughout both these books, which both authors, I think, manipulate brilliantly to really affect the reader on their journey through this book. And whilst there are these moments of joy or happiness, they are rare, but when they do happen, you still got that melancholic edge at the background where you're thinking this isn't going to last, because there's just that looming sense of dread really building up, and because of the tension, it really makes these quite easy books to really blitz through as well, because I think I read Carrie in 2 sittings, partly because it's short, but because of that element of tension, you really just feel that need to carry on reading. And Let the Right One In presents that kind of same tone and atmosphere, which makes this quite an effortless read whilst really affecting you at the same time. Something I'm really interested in talking about in this video is both of these books have supernatural beings, but the question is, who are the real monsters? Both of these have monsters, as Carrie has telekinesis, and in Let the Right One In, there are vampires, so they both have those supernatural elements. But are they the real monsters? These people who have supernatural elements, as I said, being a vampire, having telekinesis, do both do pretty bad things in both of these books. Obviously, vampires, we know they kill people to survive, so that's pretty bad. But the more, maybe not obvious antagonists, but when I really looked at these characters, I'd say the antagonists are the normal people, the people who are going around and they are the bullies or the ones who are just being vindictive and cruel, not just for cruel sake, but you really see that it's for power or because of they believe that they're entitled or above others. And I think it really shows them that they're the characters that in these books I felt actual hatred for. So I think that speaks about both authors, their ability to really evoke pure emotion from me, because I felt actual hatred when these characters were on the page, which is rare to do. But yeah, that shows that they were the characters I wanted recompense. I wanted something to happen to them. And yeah, so I was really thinking they're the real evil people here. And yeah, I thought it was really interesting that even though there are monsters in these books, are they the real monsters? Vampires, yeah, they're pretty terrifying and they drain the blood out of people, but they do it to survive. So again, there is that philosophical edge. Are they as evil as people just exercising their own power over others? Because vampires, they're doing it, if they don't murder someone, they will die. So obviously they're doing something pretty terrible if they kill someone, like atrocious and despicable. But there's a reason behind it, whereas the bullies, there is no justification for bullying, is there? Yeah, and so this idea of who are the real monsters, I felt really engaged with this theme and idea throughout both books. And it may not have been the most prevalent theme, but I think because I'd read Let the Right One In and was thinking about it, I kind of came into Carrie with that kind of lens and analytical edge to it as well, as I was reading through, kind of scanning that maybe she's not the real monster. And yeah, I just thought it was really interesting, engaging with that, really subverting your expectations. It's a bit like J.R. Tolkien did an essay on Beowulf. It's called Beowulf. It's called Beowulf and the Monsters, I believe it's called. And it's really showing that are the monsters as monstrous as they seem, and what makes them monsters. And so, whilst that is an essay and obviously different from a fiction and a novel, I thought it was really interesting in Let the Right One In and Carrie. Not just taking, okay, this is a supernatural being with a power, they should be the villain. But both these authors show that everyone can do bad things. So I really enjoy how it's not, okay, the vampire's the hero or the girl of telekinesis is the hero. Everyone is somewhere in the middle, but it's who are the antagonists? There are no heroes, there are no protagonists, but who are the antagonists is really who you can pick out in these books. And I just loved engaging with that theme and that idea. And I'd really love to see more books really kind of go with that. And if you've got any books that you've read that you think really exemplify that, I would love it if you could recommend those to me in the comments below. I'd be really thankful, as I would love to read more books like this, as I've said this review, because I don't think there's any others really. I've heard that maybe Game of Thrones, maybe, because I'm 2 books in and I'm thinking, well, there are the others, the kind of fantastical beings, which they haven't done anything horrible yet, whereas most of the characters in Game of Thrones and Westeros are pretty despicable human beings. I read too many books of terrible people, and I need to read some more comedy. So yeah, if you've got any good comedy books as well, please recommend them as well. But yeah, that is my review for Carrie, and then also my review for Let the Right One In. And please let me know if you enjoyed this, where I'll do a separate review for each and then compare. If you do, I'll certainly be doing more in the future. But everyone, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you found this interesting. Hopefully you pick the books up. Thank you for watching. Stay safe.